Some faces stay with you long after the credits roll. You remember them from a scene, a character, a moment that felt familiar. But for the 5 people in this video, the story did not end on a set. It ended in a courtroom. And what came after the verdict is harder to watch than anything they ever filmed. Number 1 is Shannon Guess Richardson. Shannon had enough screen credits to make the story feel completely unreal. Small roles on The Walking Dead. Brief appearances on The Vampire Diaries. The kind of work that keeps an actor hopeful, building towards something bigger. Then, in 2013, her name appeared in a headline that had nothing to do with casting. Federal investigators discovered that someone had been mailing rice and lace letters to high-profile public figures, including President Barack Obama and then New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. That someone turned out to be Shannon Guess Richardson. When authorities first began closing in, she tried to redirect suspicion toward her own husband, turning the case into a tangle of personal deception and political targets. Investigators kept digging. The trail kept leading back to her. In 2014, Richardson pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison with hundreds of thousands of dollars in restitution. This was not a tabloid scandal or a Hollywood meltdown. It was a federal biological weapons case. Whatever acting career she had been building quietly disappeared the moment that sentence was handed down. Shannon Guess Richardson is not remembered for her screen work. She is remembered for a crime that crossed into national security and erased everything that came before it. On number 2 is Ryan Grantham. Ryan Grantham was the kind of young actor audiences recognized without quite knowing his name. Diary of a Wimpy Kid gave him a face people associated with something wholesome and familiar. A later small role in Riverdale added to that impression. He was just a young performer with a few credits and, most assumed, a career still ahead of him. In 2020, Grantham killed his mother, Barbara Waite, at their home in British Columbia. He later pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. But the case did not stop there. During proceedings, prosecutors also revealed that Grantham had been planning further violence connected to Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau before he ultimately turned himself in. In 2022, a judge sentenced him to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 14 years. The court acknowledged his mental health struggles, but the weight of the crime made the outcome unavoidable. There was no career reset, no redemption arc, and no way to separate his name from what happened. Ryan Grantham went from a face people found vaguely familiar to a life sentence that now defines him more completely than any role he ever played. On number 3 is Zach Avery. Zach Avery's name in Hollywood was small. His fraud was not. His real name was Zachary Horwitz, and the scheme he ran was built entirely on borrowed credibility. Avery convinced investors that his company was acquiring film rights and licensing them to major streaming platforms like HBO and Netflix for international distribution. The deals sounded real. The paperwork looked real. The problem, as prosecutors laid out in detail, was that none of it existed. The contracts were fabricated. The streaming partnerships were invented. And the money coming in from new investors was being quietly used to pay the ones who had come before. What made this case particularly audacious was how completely Avery used Hollywood as a costume. He was not a studio executive or a powerful producer. He played the role of one. He borrowed the language of the entertainment industry, the names of major platforms, and the appearance of legitimacy to build something that was rotten underneath from the beginning. By the time it collapsed, investors had lost hundreds of millions of dollars. In 2021, Avery pleaded guilty to securities fraud. In 2022, he was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison and ordered to pay more than $230 million in restitution. His acting career did not end because of a bad film or a failed deal. It ended because the Hollywood story he had been selling was built entirely on lies. On number 4 is Michael Jace. Michael Jace was recognized by television viewers as Julian Lowe, the police officer he played on FX's The Shield. It was a role that gave him a permanent place in cable drama history. The fact that a man once known for playing law enforcement became the center of a real murder trial made the case deeply unsettling for anyone who remembered him from the show. In 2014, Jace shot and killed his wife, April Jace, at their home in Los Angeles. He called police himself after the shooting. What followed was not a rumor or a tabloid story. It was a domestic violence case that ended with a woman dead and 2 children left without their mother. The warning signs in cases like this can look ordinary right up until the moment everything becomes irreversible. In 2016, a jury convicted Jace of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison. Michael Jace's name is no longer remembered mainly for the shield. It is remembered because what happened in real life turned out to be far darker than anything he ever played on television. On number 5 is Will Hayden. Will Hayden built his entire public image around toughness. As the star of Sons of Guns on the Discovery Channel, he was the face of Red Jacket Firearms in Louisiana, a loud and larger-than-life shop owner who turned custom weapons and family conflict into cable television entertainment. Viewers saw a man in control, skilled at his trade, and proud of the empire he had built. What was happening off-screen was something the cameras never showed. In 2014, Hayden was arrested after serious allegations involving minors came forward. The show was canceled immediately. The brand that had been built around his name began to collapse. By 2017, he had been convicted on multiple sexual offense charges in Louisiana, with the victims described in court as young girls. The court applied the full weight of the law. In May 2017, Hayden was sentenced to 2 life sentences plus 40 years. Later that same year, a separate case brought another life sentence. He is currently serving his time at the Louisiana State Penitentiary and is not expected to ever leave prison. What makes Will Hayden's fall so disturbing is not just the nature of the crimes. It is how completely the image of toughness and family pride that reality television helped construct was shattered by what the court revealed was happening behind it.